I'm really happy to welcome to the Henry Harrison podcast, Entrepreneurs, Business, and Finance, my long-term friend and business colleague, James Poen. Hello, James.
Hello, Henry.
So James and I met through an entrepreneurs organization. There's been other people in the podcast that also have that in common. But we were in an actual breakout group together, something they call Forum, for 8 years. So we got to know each other pretty well and become good friends. And that was a while ago now, but we've stayed in close touch. And he's a very successful businessman, entrepreneur, and his company, Richardson Saw and Lawnmower, is now in transition. Or the store is going to stay the same for the customers, but the your relationship to the stores in transition. You want to tell us a little bit about that? What happened recently?
Yeah, thanks, Henry. And Richardson Saw and Lawnmower was currently acquired by private equity, a group called Graycliff Partners out of New York. Focus was our investment banker or broker that handled the acquisition through our Merrill Lynch group. So we started with Merrill Lynch. Merrill Lynch introduced us to Focus, and then Focus found us Graycliff.
And they also have you continuing to be involved, as I understand. You shared that with me. Why don't you share a little bit about why they want you around and why you want to stick around?
Yeah, so when private equity approached me with the idea of purchasing us, they came to me with an idea to acquire more stores. And they asked that I stay on as a percentage of owner. So I still maintain a large portion of ownership. I'm also the president of Richardson Saw. We were able to maintain the same staff, but my new role, my new job is acquisitions.
And it's pretty neat that out of all the stores around the area, from my standpoint, they came in and they said, "Hey, James, not only do we want to buy your store, but we want you to help us roll up others and show other folks why this is a good option for them and something they should really, really consider." Tell me a little bit about, not everybody knows what Richardson Saw and Lawnmower is. So it's a store that you took over from your father. You've grown it ever since, both with space that you've added on and with customers and the new age of the web sales and on and on and on. Give us an idea of what your business does.
Okay, well, so original store, funny story, is 1945 roughly in Garland, called Garland Saw and Lawnmower. And Garland Saw and Lawnmower started in downtown Garland. And then in the late 60s, Richardson Saw and Lawnmower was started. And my dad came on board as a manager in the early 70s, moved from Iowa, was in the military in the Navy, moved from Iowa to Texas, married my mom, and started Richardson Saw. So I could say I've been employed at Richardson Saw since the late 70s with my dad. And Richardson Saw and Lawnmower is an outdoor power equipment dealership. That means we sell lawnmowers, chainsaws, weed eaters, anything that has to do with what landscape contractors or even what you would use in your backyard to maintain your backyard and front yard.
And you have all the big names there, John Deere, tractors, whatever, you can get it, you can sell it. Some of it you have there. You also do a lot of repairs, maintenance, right? That's a big part of the business as well.
Yeah, yes. Think of a car dealership in the sense of you go and you buy your car and now you need service or parts for that car. We're exactly like a car dealership, but in the outdoor power equipment business. And yes, we were a John Deere dealership for a number of years until John Deere started doing acquisitions. John Deere decided to go from 500 dealers to let's 100 dealers. So we were a single store at the time, and so we were no longer able to be a John Deere dealer, and they've been all acquired by United Ag in the Texas market. So John Deere kind of changed their business model. But yes, we were a John Deere dealer for a long time.
So you have an interesting background from my standpoint because I'm not really good at fixing things. My wife studied engineer. She can fix things better than I can fix things. But you actually have the ground up experience of the inner workings of a lot of the, or probably all the equipment. I mean, some of it's going to be electronics and stuff, but how it actually works, how it actually needs to be repaired. So you can go and you talk to you're delegating a lot of that now, but you can go talk to your folks because I've been there and hey, what about this? What about that? What about the fan? What about the connection? And then you also are in the world of negotiating a deal with a big, large, internationally known private equity company. So quite a range. of experience. And I imagine it didn't start, well, we kind of grew up together with how to run a business. So we didn't start out knowing as much as we know now. Hopefully we know a lot now. But in the beginning, it was more about fixing things, and then it was more about running it and gradually moving up, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah, it's funny. My mom being from Dallas and my dad being from Iowa, you've got two different people raised totally different. My dad went to a school where he was the only person in his class. And on a farm, you've got to fix and manage and handle situations. Otherwise, you don't eat. Mom being from Dallas, Turtle Creek
Mower,
and yeah, yeah,
Mower repair guy.
yeah, so I was very fortunate to have two sides, right? I've got my dad's side, which is the mechanical side, which, by the way, when he went in the Navy, that was part of his job description. He worked in the engine room. And then my mom actually owned an advertising company, and she came from an entrepreneurial family, farm girl too, but my mom actually's dad was in the restaurant business, who, by the way, was my biggest mentor. He was a Jesuit graduate here in Dallas, one of the first classes, phenomenal person. And so he was in the restaurant business. And so my mom was in the advertising business. So I got the business savvy from my mom, and then I got the mechanical aptitude from my dad.
And you mentioned that too, because you did have an interlude between working for your dad's family business as a kid. You went to college, you majored in restaurant business, I guess it was called, and then you went and worked in the restaurant business too. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so when I was at Texas Tech, when I went to Texas Tech, I studied restaurant hotel management. They called it RIM at the time, and that's what I got my degree in. And I always thought I wanted to be in the restaurant business, probably because of my grandfather, or the hotel business, not sure which. But to get myself through college, I actually worked at two lawnmower stores. I think we always go back to what we know. We always go back to what we're comfortable with. And so during my time at Texas Tech, I worked at Paul's Parts and Matt Howard's Lawnmower Shop, two drastically different lawnmower stores. And I learned how to sell at Paul's Part. He actually had an hourglass on his desk that he would turn over, so he would time you on how fast you could sell. And then when I worked for Matt Howard, he was all about service. And so I took a lot from being able to sell quickly, but also how to service people correctly in
Right.
college.
I mean, the whole thing about your business that's so key is customer service. And,
Yep.
I've been there when they don't know I'm coming to see you, and they're there to greet me and how can I help you? And I know you've shown me around, so I see how they treat the people going back for repairs and maintenance and all the things that you need when you're running. Because those commercial guys, not everybody thinks about this, but they're running that equipment all day long, every day. So if you don't repair it right and you don't maintain it right, you're not going to have it that long. It's interesting too because your wife also worked with you in the business, and she's also in the restaurant business and studied that in college as well, as if I recall right.
Yeah, so Brenda went to North Texas, and Brenda has a degree in restaurant hotel management. And what's funny, we obviously didn't meet in college; we met after college. But yeah, so she was working for the hotel business, and so I think that's what attracted both of us. We have this background and love for the restaurant and hotel industry. I always believe everyone should work in the service industry at one point in their life and have much more respect for the people waiting tables, bussing tables, behind the counter, getting your rooms ready. The service industry is very difficult. It's very consumer challenging sometimes. But yeah, so she does that, and she still to this day still works in that. She consults with companies, and she's actually in charge of FIFA this year in the Dallas market for a big company called On Location. So that's her new venture at the moment.
That's pretty neat. Well, she's a smart cookie. I know that from knowing her, and a very sweet person and a good mom. You have a son now that just I met. I probably met him before when he was really young a few times, but I got to have a coffee with him while he's looking at what he's going to do now that he's graduated from college. And he was a good student, smart guy, and he's interested in technical things. He's going a different direction, and I think you encouraged him to pursue his talents and his dreams. So, some parents kind of push him to come into the family business, and you all took a different approach on that, which he seems to really appreciate. Did I get that right?
Yeah, so Zach graduated from LSU in business, and so he never grew up here. It's kind of funny. He was a big soccer player, sports. He also went to Jesuit Dallas. And so we just kind of thought we had a different career path for him. Also, I felt like that the company or the business, if you don't grow up in it, not saying you have to grow up in the business, but I think a lot of my success was growing up in the business and understanding the business and having the aptitude of mechanical aptitude. Where when you live in Dallas or you live in the city, you don't really have tractors, you don't have equipment, you don't have a big backyard, and so he didn't have the same environment growing up, and so I think he would have struggled in this business. I think he would have probably done well. I think he would have struggled in that part of the business. And it's a big part of the business is understanding how the mechanics of engines work.
Right. You mentioned tractor. I talked to you the other day, and you were out at your range with your dad on the tractor, mowing and clearing hay.
Yep.
So yeah, you've always been, whether it's hunting, fishing, ranching, cattle, motors, tractors. Yeah, you're an expert from where I sit.
Well, I've got a few hours logged. I wouldn't know if I'm an expert, but I definitely put my time in those hobbies. I never took up golf, and my son plays golf, and so I think that's why I encouraged him to go a different direction. So he'd have his weekends. That's a tough thing for entrepreneurs today. The younger generation, isn't interested in working on the weekends. And when you're in retail, you can work 6 or 7 days a week. So that was something too. I wanted him to have a little better quality of life. I work on Sundays in the office. That's when you catch up as an entrepreneur and a small business.
And you're always up early too. I know that about you.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
that's kind of the farming, ranching mentality there as well. Well, so the other part, and we did touch on it, but yeah, if you don't know the foundation of customer service, and obviously you even learned that in school with restaurants and hotel, and if you don't know how the motors work and how to repair them and in your business, but you also needed to know, well, what your financials look like and what your top line and what your salaries and taxes and real estate taxes and when to invest more and all those kind of things. And how did you learn that?
Well, I think like all of us, you learn on the job, right? I think it's how the people you surround yourself with, and I think when I went to join EO, I needed to get around like-minded people. I needed to get advice, or I don't know if we use the word advice, but ideas on
Mentoring,
how.
peer mentoring, they say. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, we
Um,
mentored each other.
we mentored each other. I think you got to surround yourself around really smart people. You've got to ask a lot of questions. Don't assume just because it's always been done that way, that's the right way to do it. There's always other ways to do it. You've got to you've got to sit down with your accountants. We do monthly books. They come to our office. We do our books here, and then we review and go over our books. And that's the best time to ask questions. The best time to learn about how my books affect my business. But you got to take the time. I can't emphasize that enough. As I'm doing these mergers and acquisitions, it's interesting to me when I ask these owners of these companies. I had this just 2 weeks ago. I said, "What's your total revenue?" And he had no idea what his total revenue. I said, "Well, when's the last time you looked at your books?" He says, "Well, I don't do them every month. I don't do them every quarter." And so, it's just like walking your building and know all the light bulbs work in the building and all the toilets flush and all the doors lock and the security cameras. You've got to understand, you've got to take time to look at your financials. As business owners, we wear a lot of hats. Sometimes we're repairing, like let's say the refrigerator the employees use and it breaks, and you're going to go fix that, or go fix the sprinkler system, or trim a tree up. Or if you get broken into, as I've had a lot of break-ins, you've got to put the door back together at 2 a.m. on a Saturday. So, you just got to get up early. You got to read the information. You got to follow through. But most importantly, you got to ask a lot of questions until you understand it. You can ask questions, but if you don't understand it, keep asking questions. And if you still don't understand it, find another way or ask a different way until you do, or get with your peers and run it by them. And I was fortunate to be in a great group with you. And I think there was 10 of us in that group. And that it was awesome because everybody was a little different, but we had some guys that had tremendous amount of experience in financials. And I know that there were some guys in the group that helped me with financials and understanding and reading financials.
That's not always an easy thing, and you do have to pay attention. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons that you got picked to roll into this private equity, because you had the spectrum of knowledge of running a business top down and running a business bottom up. And those people are hard to find. And they're lucky to have you in my book. But I know you're going to do just, I know you've already done, you're going to continue to do just fine yourself. I don't mean that. But, and I know this is something too that you talked about many, many years ago that you needed to have your business and then you wanted to understand what situation and what setup your business need to have to be sellable. Whether or not you were going to sell it, you didn't need to sell it. It's a time in your life where you decide you wanted to go on and you're taking on new challenges. It's not like you're retiring. You're ready for a new challenge or a new adventure. But so talk a little bit about the changes of the business itself. It's been quite a while now you've been running it. The world's changed a lot. Didn't have iPhones, didn't have online sales. Imagine there's a lot of other things that have changed over the years.
Yeah, I think, well, certainly the online business wasn't there. It's really, that's some difficult to navigate right now because one of the challenges that you run into is most small businesses like myself, you're not an Amazon, and what we're seeing now is people really expect it to be on the front door at the end of the day or within 24 to 48 hours. And for a small business, sometimes that's very difficult to do. We don't have our own delivery trucks. We don't have that deep of an inventory. So the online side of it has been difficult to navigate, as I mentioned earlier. And the other thing is we've had a lot of restrictions from manufacturers on what we can and cannot sell online, but they're starting to open up. When online started, it was an absolute no way, no how can you order or ship anything online. And then one thing led to another. And of course, dealers push the envelope. We just get slapped on the hand when we did something, but they'd never cancel us. But now it's the manufacturers are starting to ship directly to our customers, starting to cut us out. So I'm not really sure where this is going to go with the online side of it. I do think in the next 5 to 10 years, though, as we, here's where I'm going with this. I've got customers that are coming in that they've been coming in with their grandfather, my grandfather and my dad, and I'm seeing third generation customers come in here. But I worry that third and that fourth generation customer that lineage won't continue, and they'll order online because it's just easier.
It's a constant challenge. Best Buy did a whole thing where they brought vendors into their store so that because everybody was ordering online and they did a whole turnaround. I mean, I know there's still always going to be some people that want to come into a store, meet someone, look at whatever they're buying, and also know the people that are going to be maintaining it. But like you said, you can't ever assume things are going to stay the same. So
You
that's
have to
trans.
adapt. You have to adapt, and you got to be quick and nimble. You always hear that adage, be able to turn the ship quick. That's so true. You got to be able to turn that ship quick if you've got to make a change in direction of where you're going to go. For us, we went more commercial in our business and a little less consumer these last few years. And then coming out of COVID kind of changed the hours of operation for us a little bit. So Dallas is such a booming market that the commercial business is not slowing down. We don't see any indicators of that slowing down, but we are seeing a little bit of consumer spending slow down with all the tariffs in place.
You also put yourself, your lineage, put yourself in a great location right next to two major highways that are
Yeah.
two major thoroughfares in Dallas Fort Worth. So a lot of people may not, they've seen the sign driving by. You mentioned, I think I've seen, oh yeah, they know where that is. Well, so right now, how big is the store? Give folks an idea of like the general square footage of the lot and where the building is, because it's big, but it's also run very efficiently.
Yeah.
Use all.
So we're on Central Expressway between Beltline and Spring Valley on the west side of Central, right across from Papa Do's for those that might eat there. We have 3 buildings currently. We have one that's all retail. We have another one where we office and warehouse. And then we have a full mechanic facility with more what we call service items where we have pre-built equipment for our cities. We do a lot of business with cities and schools. So we have to have a lot of equipment on hand ready to go. So we have 3 buildings. We have 25 employees, which is about the right size, in my opinion. Dealerships that do the volume I do usually have around 35. We've been able to do it between 20 and 25. And I think it's a lot to do with our systems, our processes, our procedures, and we've had very little turnover in our staff. So by having less turnover in the staff, we can be much more efficient. We can be better at what we do because we're not spending all those hours and time, days training people. I've probably got 10 employees that have been here over 25 years.
I know throughout the years you spend a lot of time on systems, processes, and procedures, which is something that the biggest companies in the world and the smallest ones are always talking about. Give an example of something maybe that worked out well that you improved.
Well,
Some,
I'll take this from my restaurant. Let's just back up with my restaurant degree. When you would order a drink from a restaurant, a waiter would put it into the POS system, then it would generate a drink order. The bartender would make the drink order, then the waiter or server would send it to your table. So you've got a process of inventory management. You've got a process of someone who the waiter's usually not a bartender. The bartender knows how to make the drink, knows how to make it with the right ingredients, with the right percentages. So now you can manage your cost, right, on that drink or your profitability. So we went to the same thing where our mechanics, instead of our mechanics trying to figure out what parts they needed or our mechanics walking back and forth and grabbing their parts, we created pick systems where our mechanics never leave their workstation because here they are making you 110 an hour and you don't need them doing things that are not efficient. So we would have them stay at their counter, put computers there, figure out what parts they need. We pull the parts for them. We inventory the parts right then and there, make sure the inventory those inventory parts get on the shop job, bring it to the mechanic so he can keep working, and we never lose any efficiencies. That wasn't in place when I got here. And that came from just some background experience in the restaurant business.
yeah, your experience carries over. So then you went to doing a big sale with a private equity, a lot of lawyers, a lot of things to think about on that one. Work your way through, be careful. I know you were asking people advice, but it went smoothly. And any advice on that? Someone that
Yeah.
might.
So for us, we were really fortunate to get with Focus, and Focus listened to us. We spent a lot of times in meetings talking about what type of partnership we were looking for, what type of group we were looking for. And the very first person they put in front of us, we knew we were a good fit. They knew we were a good fit, great connection. They asked a lot of questions about our business. We were able to spend about 3 days with them. They left, kind of discussed it with our broker, and we felt like this was the right group. So they wound up coming in and doing an equity purchase. So that process took about 9 months. Once we signed the NDA, once we kind of talked through everything, that whole process took 9 months to go through everything. It could probably have been done a little quicker, but with an equity purchase, there were a lot of questions on, we had real estate involved. We work with banks to do financing. So there was a lot of pieces that they needed to understand. They had never bought the outdoor power equipment business. So they wanted to make sure they understood it because we were the platform for a bigger project that they had in mind. So that process took 9 months. I'm hoping as we acquire more dealerships, that's my new role, acquisitions, as I mentioned. I'm hoping that process takes 90 days to 120 days, and we'll do asset purchases going forward.
So what does your day look like now? You're still president, you mentioned.
Yes.
So you're still, I guess you're still running it, but you have a
No.
team of people that are running it as well. So you got a general manager, and so yeah, you say no.
Well, I have a general manager that runs a day-to-day operation. So like today, yes, I've been in the office really catching up. I was last week in Miami at a Toro meeting for 4 days. So I still get involved. I kind of see what's going on with the operation, making sure everything's good here. There's a lot of customers, clients that don't even know we sold. We didn't really, we did uh, an advertise on LinkedIn and a few other places. And then there were press releases done by Gray Cliff and by our brokers, but we didn't really go out and tell people we sold because I'm still here. We don't want the public to think anything different. Private equity is really more about a financial partner.
So you've got a financial partner now. And so what does your day look like when you're talking to other stores, other facilities? They probably know who they are, and they may probably know who you are, and so you're just calling up and saying, "Hey, can you talk?" Or how does that go?
Yeah. So, well, actually, I'm doing it now. So I was in Miami for a meeting and I was approached by 4 different dealers that heard that I had sold to private equity. So they approached me and they wanted to have conversations with me on like, how does this work? Kind of like what we're talking about right now. How does it work? Well, it's pretty simple. I sit down, I hear a little bit about their business, understand their operation, ask a few basic questions. Do you have a general manager? Are you 100% owner? What product lines do you carry? What's your revenue look like? What's the real estate? Do you have a lease, with yourself, or do you own the real estate? Is there any debt? Maybe what's the age of your technicians and your staff? So it's real basic questions, and then they'll ask a few questions of me. How did you find these guys? How are you involved in it? What's my day-to-day operation look like if I sell to you? So you talk about these things, then you try to get an NDA signed, and then once you get the NDA signed, you send over a series of questions, a little more in-depth questions. Usually you're looking at 3 years of financials. You want to look at that. You want to understand who they're banking with. And then the big question for me to them is, if we buy you, will you stay? Will you stay? Because I can't run 10, 15 stores throughout Texas and Oklahoma. So it's getting them to take money off the table, maybe leaving a little money in the roll up, and then getting them to run the store. And sometimes that's a little hard for them to fathom. They're thinking, hey, I'm going to take all this money. I mean, I'm retired. I'm done. Thought that was the point of selling, right? It's like selling your house. You move out. And with these kind of acquisitions, you're selling the house, but yet you still live in it. So we're kind of leasing it from you until we sell it again. So that's kind of how we talk to the potential buyers, is ask them, hey, do you have a little tread on the tire? Are you willing to stay for 3 or 4 or 5 years? I was 54 years old when I decided to sell. And yes, I could have kept taking, the business was paid for. I own my own real estate. I've got a great staff that could run it. I could have kept doing that, but I was ready for a new challenge. And so that's kind of what I sell to them. I tell them, hey, are you ready for a new challenge? Would you like to take money off the table? Would you like us to give you money and put it in your bank account and do all the things that you wish you could have done as an entrepreneur now with someone else's money?
I'm ready to sell mine. I'm on. Well, all those years we've talked, and you always gave me a lot of good mentoring advice as we did. That's what we called in our group. And it's a lot of this I knew, but I didn't know all the latest things. And it's really interesting. I know people are going to enjoy hearing about it. And you were just a smart guy and a good guy and a good businessman. Anything else you want to kind of wrap up on that you think people might want to hear?
Yeah, I think if you're ever thinking about selling a business or want to sell a business, allow yourself some time. I would say 18 months. Maybe look at getting a CFO in or COO in there. It just depends on how you're set up in your organization. Tighten up some of your office things, tighten up your processes, align yourself with good bankers, talk to as many brokers as you can, negotiate with brokers, and don't let the process stress you out. It gets a little crazy those last 30 days because there's a lot of things going on. Interview different M&A attorneys. If you've never had a quality and earnings done, or maybe looking at audited books one year, start thinking about all these things. I guess the point, what I'm saying is, if you ever think about selling your company, you got to start working on it now. That way it doesn't overwhelm you. And pick one thing and work on it, understand it, and then go to the next and the next and the next. And understand that the bankers and the brokers will walk you through the process. They do this all day long, every day. Our broker told us exactly how it was going to happen, and it happened exactly the way our broker told us. So listen a lot during this process. Talk less and listen more.
Well, that's a good, valuable description there for sure, which I think a lot of people would take to heart. Hey, well, that's fantastic, James. Thanks for taking the time with all you've got going on, and it was fun for me. So, hey, talk to you soon.
Thank you, Henry.